Hello, welcome back to Dr. Toomer Talks on Tuesday. If you're here for the first time, say hello. Even if you're not here for the first time, say hello. If you're here live, say hello. If you are watching later, please put hashtag tag replay. And I'd like to introduce myself for anyone who doesn't know who I am. Hopefully you do by now. But I am Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician and founder of Total Weight Care Institute. And what Total Weight Care Institute is really the home of a few entities. One that provides compassionate and complete weight care to patients who feel sometimes like they're at the end of their rope, or they're not sure where to turn, or they're not sure, they're overwhelmed by the amount of information that they've been receiving. And I just kind of make it make sense. I make a lot of things make sense, hopefully. Um, the other is it also houses a profitable weight care practice for physicians. Now, there's nothing wrong with physicians earning and serving, but also with confidence, because more of us are needed to provide the type of compassionate care that so many of us did not get when we needed it and who want it now. And so, just trying to create a space where there's more of us. And so I talk a lot about a lot of things. Lately, I've been talking a lot about GLP-1s and treatment, mainly because there's been a lot of shaming around that, and I'm very much an anti-shamer. But often what happens, especially with any type of process, particularly around weight care, is that we tend to internalize a lot of that shame, and we internalize a lot of that blame. And as a result, it tends to carry over into lots of different areas, not just around our weight care. And so today I want to talk a little bit about giving yourself grace, because essentially that's what I've had to do today, and do almost every day. So what grace is essentially is goodwill, and it is also giving thanks. It's like saying grace as well. So when you give yourself grace, essentially that's what you're doing. You're giving yourself goodwill. You're giving yourself something to be thankful for. So when you think the opposite of that is essentially punishment, vengeance, judgment, which lends itself to increased stress. And when I say that, not giving yourself grace can kill you, it is absolutely true. And mainly it's because the opposite of that means that you are internalizing negative feelings, negative talk, and our body can't tell the difference when a bully is someone else or if it's ourselves. And I'm going to say that again. Our body cannot tell the difference between a bully that is someone else or ourselves. Our body cannot tell the difference between mean words being said to you by somebody else or mean words being said to you by yourself. In fact, sometimes the ones by ourselves actually have more of an impact, have more of a negative effect. And what that effect is a rise in cortisol, the stress hormone. And I talk a lot about what cortisol does in the body, and I'm just going to go through this rather briefly, just starting from head to toe. So what cortisol does is it increases, it's a hormone that usually comes out or stress at the same time as epinephrine and norepinephrine. They tend to kind of goes all together. And what they do is they restrict blood vessels. The smaller the vessel, the more that restriction happens. The more that restriction happens, the more blood supply and oxygen is cut off from the areas that it's supplying. That's including the brain. Microvascular dementia is the most common form of dementia. We hear a lot about Alzheimer's, but microvascular is really the most common. And we often hear about diabetes and about hypertension being the number 2 causes of that. But stress and the hormones that stress produces, that bullying produces, that negativity produces, make diabetes worse, raise blood sugars, whether you're diabetic or not, and raises blood pressure, whether you have hypertension or not. And so those small vessels in your brain are being damaged just simply by the things that you say to yourself. But if it can be damaged by the things you say to yourself, it can also be undamaged, at least to a point. You can stop the damage. You may not always be able to reverse it, but you can definitely stop it before it becomes a problem. It's years in the making, but it can be very quickly stopped. And so when we say kind things to ourselves, when we give ourselves grace, when we say, thank ourselves for being able to do the things that we're able to do, and just say, you know what? I'm not going to judge myself for not having been able to do X, Y, or Z. I'm not going to beat myself up for having done X, Y, and Z. It may seem a bit Pollyanna, but essentially what you're doing is finding the silver lining in any given situation. Yeah, I ate 5 cookies, but I didn't eat 15. It works. It really does. I may not have exercised today, but I did sit and I allowed myself to reflect and organize, which is just as effective in making sure that tomorrow is a more productive day. And so there's lots of different ways of giving yourself grace. Giving yourself grace is a muscle that has to be exercised in order to build it, for it to happen naturally, for it to be second nature. And that essentially means being very careful with what you say to yourself, what you say about yourself, what you hear yourself saying, definitely what you feel yourself saying. Because again, our body cannot tell the difference between a bully that is someone else or ourselves. Our body cannot tell the difference between the words said to us by someone else or ourselves. So make sure that those words are kind and keep your cortisol levels down. There's a physiologic reaction to the things that we say or do. And so that is why giving yourself grace can actually save your life. So again, I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer, family medicine and community health physician. If there's anyone listening who has questions really about anything, not just about this, but any questions, I talk a lot about health, wellness, and weight care. So if you have questions, you can post them now. You can find me on my website, drtoomer.com, and leave me questions there, or leave a message for me and I'll get it. Or you can just any of my my social media platforms. YouTube, I'm Dr. Toomer. Instagram, I'm Dr. CH Toomer. And on TikTok, I'm Dr. Toomer Talks. And then on Facebook, I'm Dr. Toomer. So if you want to find me and you have questions, just ask. I also have Facebook groups. I'll tell you a little bit more about those if you want to know, but I have Facebook groups where I do a lot of teaching as well. So again, I'm giving myself grace today because, as you can tell, maybe you can't, I am very tired. I was traveling and didn't get home till very late last night. And I am someone who does not do well without my sleep. And so, I don't do well without much sleep. And so sometimes I'm just tired, but I still wanted to show up as best I could. May not be my best talk, but I'm going to give myself grace because I'm here and I'm talking, and I'm sure somebody somewhere has gained something from what I've said. So again, good night. Thank you for joining me, and make sure you leave comments and questions for me for later. Good night. Oh, oops, I have a question. Just came in right before I was about to click. Okay. So someone asked a question. I've been taking Manjaro 7.5 milligrams for 3 months, and my A1C has increased from 6.1 to 6.2. What would be the cause of this increase? Probably a psychosocial cause. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll consider a medication sort of a miracle drug. And as a result, we're not as careful because we feel the medication is doing its job. So that's one way. So you may have to just make sure you haven't adjusted how you're eating and that you're not relying so heavily on the medication that you're not being careful with the amount of sugar or the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating. Two, the other is stress. Um, the medication can only do so much. Stress will override it. Stress will override a lot of things. And so what can happen is, um, you know, stress can make your hemoglobin A1C go up by making your blood sugars go up. The other, though, is hemoglobin A1C is an average of 3 months. So your first reading, depending on what was happening, maybe your average was a little lower, and so the first time, and then it was just your average was a little higher the second time. But generally, it's because of blood sugar. It has to be. So you said you cut out all complex carbs and sugar. Well, if you cut out carbs and sugar, it's stress. It's cortisol. It's your body creating it, because your body actually stores sugar in the form of glucagon in your liver, and your liver will actually release glucose for various reasons: lack of sleep, not stress, exercise, especially if it's cardiovascular exercise, can make your blood sugar go up. And so, all those things have to be taken into consideration. And then not all complex carbs, and then cutting out carbohydrates also makes your body make its own. Your body still needs carbohydrates for your brain function and for energy. So if you're not eating enough, that also puts your body into stress. And so what that does is your body then tries to compensate and it often overshoots when trying to compensate. So all your sugar stores are then being released. Now, if you've been on Mounjaro and your A1C went up, but your weight also came down, then it's definitely stress related. If your weight stayed about the same or increased again, then there's something in your diet that probably is accounting for it. That start keeping a food diary just to be really sure of what you're eating. Because if you're cutting out complex carbs and sugar, your hemoglobin A1C should go down, not up, especially if you're on Mounjaro. So there's a stress component, I'm pretty sure, involved. Or stress caused, well, let me put it this way. There's increased cortisol. What the reason is could either be stress, it could be because of stressing the body from over-exercise, particularly cardiovascular exercise is one. And then just stressing the body by not eating enough. So the body's trying to compensate by pushing out sugar, the stored sugar that it already has. I hope that answers your question. Any more questions? I love getting questions. Well, if not, you can always send them to me privately if you need to, or you can, if you're in my group, you can post them there because there are other people who would love to hear them as well. And so I thank you for joining me, and let me see. So it says, I need to take a closer look at my stress levels. I keep a daily food journal. It's probably due to a lack of food. Yeah. So not eating enough will stress you also. There's lots of different reasons why your body will go into stress mode. And so not eating enough, having a lot of stress. And so if you're exercising, the best exercise is that is low impact rhythmic exercise that will kill two birds with one stone. It helps with, your overall conditioning, but then it also brings down your cortisol levels. So it's always a good thing. So another question, I've been on Mounjaro and lost to my goal. How do I keep it off without having to being on the meds? Well, the only way you can come off the medication is if you replace what the medications are doing with something else. The only reason you lose weight when taking a GLP-1 is because it is actually treating a disease state. It is treating a metabolic process or metabolic derangement. It doesn't work on thin air. It's working on something in your body. And that process hasn't gone away. That disease has not gone away. The only way that, so what it's doing is only countering the metabolic derangement that's there. The only other natural way that can happen is with muscle. Building muscle is the only way of determining what happens after weight loss with a GLP-1. And all it will do, and it's every person's different. So it may drop it to the point where you may have to only take it once a month instead of once a week. It may be that you take it once a week, but at a much, much lower dose. It may be that you lower the dose and the frequency, or you may be able to come off it all completely. But it all depends on how much dedicated muscle building happens. Dedicated muscle building in and of itself is one of the healthiest things we can do for ourselves now and for our future selves. It will completely determine what your quality of life is later. It will determine your mobility. It will determine your balance. It will determine your strength and your ability to do things for yourself for how long. So building muscle is really important regardless of weight loss, regardless of the medication, but it is the one thing, well, actually say two, because it's muscle building and stress reduction, keeping stress levels down. Those are the two things that determine what happens with the medication once you've reached your goal weight. Oh, so you're welcome. If there are there any more questions? Well, if you don't have anything for this evening, you can always post them. I will see them if you post them after this or in my groups or in a message sometimes. And also it's very helpful for me because it gives me topics to talk about. So, so if there's nothing else, I'm going once, going twice. So if there's no more questions, I will see you next week. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you being here. And I will see you next Tuesday for Dr. Tumor Talks. And if there's any topics that you want to hear, just simply send me a message or post them here in the comments. And I will be more than happy to give a talk on that too. All right. Good night.